تمام. لا ربنا يخليك.
Want to help me pass something out? Okay. Can you make sure everybody gets one of these? Can you make sure everyone gets one of these and bring me the rest? Okay? Thank you. Yeah, everyone should get. Last time they came, people came a little late. Can I?
Okay, can you grab something and come to the front so Maggie can start? 106. Start 110 sharp.
Yeah, 110 is good.
Okay. Now it's 106. We'll start 110 sharp.
He did not. He did not.
Everyone, for the sake of time, can you come to the front so we can start? So a couple of announcements till we settle down. This Wednesday, we have the Vesper of St. Mark. Please encourage your kids and their parents to come. It's a good opportunity to bond with St. Mark. Next week, we don't have a servant meeting. The following week, we'll have more announcements to come. Next week, we'll have Sunday school as usual, despite of the festival. And Maggie can start.
Do we want to pray? Okay. Hi, everyone. How are you? I'm so happy to see you. Clearly, you had an okay time at the first workshop. Okay. So in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. So I'm really, really happy to be here today to do teaching workshop number 2. Sharif, can you close the door in the back? Thank you. So today we're going to be doing the second workshop. We're going to be talking about power, practice, and purpose. And we're definitely going to be tying everything that we've talked about today to the first workshop. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a refresher on what we talked about in the first one, just in case you couldn't access the material or you couldn't make it to the first one, okay? So with a partner, I would like you to please talk about this question. You have copies of the slides, so if you can't see anything on the board, you will have all this information right here on this handout, okay? So with a partner, what did you try or notice since workshop 1? And where did you see God at work through your students? And I just want to give you a gentle reminder. Remember that in the first workshop, I gave you a lot of foundational information, and we're going to do a little recap of that today. But I did not say to you, you should leave this workshop and now everything is suddenly going to change. I gave you some foundational information, and we're talking about small shifts, right? So I'm still going along that line today. I'm not saying you leave this workshop and you've changed everything. However, if I did a 30% good job in the first one and we worked together as a team, then you should have noticed a small shift in your lens. Give me a thumbs up if you've noticed any kind of shift in the way you look at teaching. Give me this if you have noticed, 5% shift. Give me this if nothing. You feel worse about Sunday school teaching since the first one, and you're quitting and joining a different church. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Evie. Thank you so much, Pumpkin. Thank you. All right. So I want you to talk to a neighbor. And actually what you can do is you can sit in some groups. Okay, let's just make our groups right now. Okay? And what I would like today is, last time I just said sit with whoever. What I would like you to do is to form groups based on the grades you teach. So if you are high school servants, find some other high school servants. If you are middle school servants, find some middle school servants. If you're elementary, find some elementary servants. If you can't find anyone in the same grades that you teach with, ربنا معاكم. I don't know what to tell you. They should be at this workshop, okay? So take a minute, find your people. Are you finding your people? Yeah. You just need to have someone to talk to, okay? All right, at 1:17, we are coming back together. 1:17. You have 3 minutes. This is what you're discussing, okay? Right here. Oh, this? Sibik may hindi dito. 1 more minute, please. All right, everyone. So if you came to workshop number 1, you remember that I put a picture of the kids on the board, and I said one of the best mentors I ever had started every workshop that they did with a reminder of who we serve. This is a picture of Alexandria, and I put this picture on this slide because when I look at this picture of Alexandria, who okay, but when I look at this picture of Alexandria, me and Sammer were like, she looks like she's 17. And I just saw her sitting at my desk where I study and do my work. And I was like, wow, one day Alexandria could be doing. So the reason why I put that is because I'm asking us all to remember, A, who we serve, because some of you are literally servants, but also B, because we're trying to remember that all of our kids are going to be the future of the church. Is this working? Okay. Okay, great. All right, so can someone share something that they shared in their groups? Yeah, Max. Oh, so I'm so sorry, guys. Maggie is talking. The other more important one. Okay. Okay. Good idea.
One thing that resonated with me from the last workshop was owning and understanding that all the backgrounds and different family issues, different languages, different culture, and that not all of them are going to be learning the same too. So one thing we were talking about is how we started to think about students on more of an individual basis.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. All right, someone from over here want to share? Harder. Okay. Yeah?
I was remembering what you said about having unconditional positive regard for the students, which can be hard to remember when the class is going crazy, but just like, yeah, continuing to, not look at students as like the problem, even if they're acting up, but just, yeah, to always look at them with eyes of love.
Okay, great, thank you. You hang on to that. Okay. All right, so we're gonna move forward. This is our agenda for today. So thank you for sharing out some things that have shifted. Today we're going to reflect on power and practice. We're going to talk about building classroom community. Who here has had a workshop before about building community? That's what I thought. Great, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about problem-posing education. I'm going to give you today, what I promised you last time, some practical strategies, and then we're going to reflect. And remember, everything that we're talking about today is building on what we talked about last time. Oh, Lillian is here. I'm so happy. We're going to take some of the mindset shifts, and we're going to make them into things that are actually going to be happening in the class. So, quick refresher of what we learned last time. And if you did not watch the workshop or you did not attend the workshop, that's okay, that's all right. When you have an opportunity later to access it, that would be great because it will help you deepen your learning of what we talk about today. So we talked about zone of proximal development. Give me a thumbs up if you vaguely remember this. Good, like Ashraf and Maya, very good. Transfer of learning, Christ-centered teaching. We talked about what kind of teacher Christ would be. And we talked about how we don't want to have that deficit view. We want to have an asset view. You definitely remember that, yes? See, that's my asset view of you and your attendance, okay? All right, so quick reminder of the trauma-informed priorities. We talked about these 4 priorities. Kids who are attending Sunday school, if we're working from a trauma-informed lens, they need these 4 things. They need predictability. They need flexibility, they need empowerment, and they need connection. We're going to talk a lot today about connection, all right? We talked about asset-based versus deficit-based view. It is our agreement in this room, and if this is not your agreement, then yani, you're in trouble, okay? Every child brings spiritual gifts and curiosity. Remember how we talked about sometimes people think, well, this kid just doesn't want to learn. Every kid wants to learn. Every kid is born wanting to learn. It's, do we create the conditions for them to want to learn more and keep learning? And remember how we talked about if kids were not born wanting to learn, none of us would be walking, right? Kids learn how to walk. Lisse Lilian, okay? Ala طول كده. She wasn't in the first workshop, على فكرة, okay? Not trauma from Sunday school, okay? Trauma informed. You don't get, hopefully you don't get trauma from Sunday school. And if you do, I mean, this is why we're having this workshop, okay? All right, and finally, we talked about unconditional positive regard, where our care for the kids doesn't depend on their behavior. When we parent our children, right? We don't love them on the days that they're being good, right? We love them every day, and sometimes we're human beings and we lose our temper and all that stuff. No one is not leaving room for that. But again, our behavior and our view of the kids doesn't depend on their behavior, okay? So, we are going to do a classroom inventory. And this is why I wanted you to sit with your teams, okay? We're gonna take 10 minutes to answer the questions on this sheet. And I'm gonna tell you my internal selfish reason as to why I want you to do this. So right now, you're in the month of May. Now, I have been a classroom teacher. I'm not a classroom teacher anymore. I work with other teachers, but I've been a classroom teacher. And May is like the month when teachers, like the foot is out the door, right? And if you have had a class this year that has been a challenge, you're like, Nushkur Rabbina, Nairuz gay, like, you know, we're gonna switch the kids. You don't wanna say it out loud, but internally you might be like, thank God there's a new group coming, you know, I've aged 15 years in the last year. That's just a human thought, right? I'm selfishly internally thinking that everything you're learning right now, you're putting like small things into your teaching now, but next September, you're gonna have a whole new fresh page. Okay? So if you don't have classroom rules, if you don't have routines right now, if you don't have any of that stuff, come September, I'm thinking you took a classroom inventory and you know what you have and what you don't have. And in September, you're gonna start brand new, okay? So I'm gonna give you 10 minutes to answer the questions on this sheet. And I want you to think back to everything you learned from workshop 1, okay? And I'm gonna show you a little trick right now. Did you know that people have a really hard time staying on time when they're doing group work, and they have a hard time silently reflecting? This is a trick that you can use in your Sunday school class. Kids with trauma backgrounds or kids that come from any kind of marginalized background really need a visual timer. Like actually, if you work with kids with learning differences, they respond really well to something as simple as a visual timer. I'm talking about kids with learning differences like ADHD, okay? They will respond really well to something like this for all ages. So I'm gonna put this on for you, and you have 10 minutes to answer as many of these questions as you can, and you should have a writing utensil, okay? You're doing this as a group. And there's music. There you go. If you want to work individually, you can do that too. You don't have to answer the questions with everyone. You could be answering them alone, sitting together and talking when you need to. It's up to you. See, everyone works differently, right? So you can do that if you need to. I know you need more time. But have you had these kinds of conversations before? I mean, Hannah, of course, Taban. Of course Hannah has. But have you had these kind of conversations before? Great. Have some people never had these kinds of conversations before? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, Mina, go ahead. Perfect. That's what I want you to say. I actually want to hear you say that. The whole opportunity or the whole impetus behind doing this is not so you can answer every single one of these questions, and it's not so you all know everything by the end of this. But some people don't even know that you should ask these questions, right? Some of us have been taught that when we teach Sunday school, we're going to have the kids come in, we have all the knowledge, the kids are like deposits. We give them the knowledge. If they memorize it and repeat it back to us, then we have been successful. Who here was taught like that at any point in their life? I definitely was. Everyone has been taught like that in some way, shape, or form. It's not a bad thing, but is it what our kids need right now? I would say some of the things that we used to do need to shift a little bit, and that's why you're here, right? So we're not going to talk in detail about this. We're going to keep going. Oh, wait, no. And we're going to go to the next section where we talk about community. So Abuna Sam had no idea that he was doing this, but when he did his series during the upper room liturgy about community, I was like, wow, he's really helping me out, because I have an idea for a future workshop where we're going to talk about community being the curriculum of Sunday school. So community building in our Sunday school classes is not something that is a side activity. It's actually what you need in order to teach kids anything. You need connection with kids before they will trust you and let down their guard and even think about allowing you to teach them anything, right? And I'm going to ask us to think about this. Who here thinks of community as essential for Sunday school? You definitely all do, and I'm going to tell you why. How many times in my life, in my 33 years of age, have I heard visitations and relationship building being like one of the number one things of building a great Sunday school class? Everyone here has heard that, right? Who here can do 3 visitations per week every week? I can't. I wish I could. I cannot, all right? And I'm so sorry to say this, and you may not like what I'm about to say. If you are relying on visitations to build community in your Sunday school class, I think that is a disservice, right? If we are running Sunday school classes where every week we're doing whatever we want, we're depositing information into the kids, we're not building relationships with them in class, and we're like, but you know what, I'm going to do a visitation on Thursday, and it will forgive everything that I've done on Sunday. Then, and I don't think anyone operates that way, but I think sometimes we're like, okay, but we just need to do some visitations. I don't agree with that. I think you need to do everything, and I think at the very least, every class, every Sunday should have community as one of its core values and its core tenets, okay? That is something that's not like it's nice to have. It's not nice to have, it's essential, all right? And remember we talked about one of those 4 tenets of trauma-informed teaching is connection and empowerment. So, what helps your kids feel seen and safe in Sunday school? I want you to think about that internally for a moment. What helps your kids in class feel seen and safe? And just a reminder that you have this. So if you can't see something on here, I reflected on my last workshop and I was like, they need these. So you could write notes on here. You can look right here if it's easier. And I will provide you with the Arabic translation. Samir, we need to do the Arabic translation. Thank you so much. Later on, okay? Just think internally, like what do you do in class to build community and connection? Hopefully you have something in your mind. If you don't have anything in your mind, these are just some sample ideas. So if you are in the Arabi project, which some of you are, I lead the Arabi project service. And you know that at the beginning of every meeting, we have a thing we do, right? Whether it's a learning moment or a check-in. That is something that I do in the meetings intentionally to foster community in the meetings, right? So one thing that you could do is you could check in with kids at the beginning of the meeting. Give me a high, give me a low. Everyone go around in a circle. Give me a high, give me a low. Not right now, mshintu, okay? But everyone, give me a high, give me a low. There's something it sounds very cheesy, but with elementary kids, this works really well. What if one day you did a thankfulness circle, where at the beginning of the lesson, you have the kids sit in small groups and you say, go around and everyone say something that you're thankful for. It doesn't have to be Thanksgiving. It can just be a Sunday where you need a quick warm-up activity. And we'll talk about more examples, okay? But I want to give you some sample community building routines. So one community building routine for elementary school kids is standing at the door and greeting every child by name. So simple, so effective. The kid knows, okay, my teacher sees me, my teacher knows my name, and they saw me and they greeted me, and they know I'm here and they're happy that I'm here. That's one thing. Helper of the day. We know about helper of the day, but I think being consistent about that is very good. Middle school, like I said, weekly high, weekly low. And it's an optional share. Not all middle school kids like to share, and same thing for high school. Not everyone likes to share. I'm a big fan of you can pass. It's okay. We'll come back to you next time, no problem. Silent journaling, this depends on the class. I can see some of the classes that I was in at a younger age being classes where I would have seen myself pick out a journal and write in it in the middle of class. But I also remember some classes where that would have felt maybe a little strange. But a turn and talk, where you talk to the person next to you, that's a community building technique. Do you see how all of these don't involve the teacher talking to the kids? They don't involve the teacher standing up in front of the room and saying, okay, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know, and you're going to take it in, and you're going to be passive. You see that? And then for high school, we're going to talk more about this, but the questions that you ask high school, because these are basically young adults, right, should be open-ended, and they should spark reflection. And as much as possible, you should be student-led in high school. I'm a little bit biased because I was a high school teacher for 8 years, not like in church, but like outside of church. And that's one of the things that they tell you as a high school teacher is it should be as student-led as possible, okay? So now we're going to talk about something that is my favorite thing to talk about. We're going to talk about something called banking education. So if you have been like kind of listening for practical tips, I'm going to ask you now to shift to a foundational concept. This is a foundational concept, all right? Banking education is a very traditional approach where the teacher deposits information into the students, and they are like empty containers, okay? The teacher has all the knowledge, and the student's job is to listen, memorize, and repeat. And I'm not even going to ask you if you think this is a problem. I'm going to tell you it's a problem, and hopefully you will agree with me. And if you don't, and you just agree with me. So this is a problem. And before you tell me, like, Maggie, that's just not realistic, we have things we need to get through, I'm not telling you need to change. Remember, I didn't tell you you're going to come in here and you're going to change everything you do. I'm asking you to think about what you do, and I'm asking you to think about it in different ways, and I'm asking you to shift. Small shift, right? If you are doing this workshop, you care about this, but you can't change everything overnight, but you can make small shifts, and you already are, all right? So this is a problem because it silences the kids' voices, and it disconnects them from the Bible and their lived experience. They're going to listen to the Bible, and they're going to listen to the scripture, and they're going to listen to the teachings, and they're not going to connect it to their lived experience. Some of them might, right? Like some of them will, but remember, we're not teaching for the kid that knows the whole Bible by heart, and we're not teaching for the kid that knows all the doxologies. We're teaching all kids, and we're not looking at kids like when they don't learn, it's their fault. We're making a classroom where it's trauma-informed and it's asset-based, right? So it's not connecting the scripture to their lived experience. And it reinforces power imbalance. It makes it so that the servant keeps holding all the power and the kids are just listening and they're passive. And lastly, it kind of assumes that the only person with something to offer in the class is the teacher, and the students have nothing meaningful to offer. And that is simply not true. And in this concept of education, it's almost like knowledge is a gift that the servant passes to the students, and it's like bestowed upon them. The definition of banking education is the opposite of problem-posing education. That is a concept that was named and defined by an educational philosopher named Paulo Freire, who is from Brazil and was this like revolutionary. And he basically looked at all the problems that were in society, and he looked at the lower class that didn't have money, that didn't have say, that was in this like dictatorship, this authoritarian rule. And he said, you know what? Education could be freedom. Education could be freedom. And if we think about that for church and we think about that for carrying on our faith, I'm so sorry, but if you are teaching my child, if you're teaching my children, I don't want my children to memorize the whole Bible but never know how it applies to their life. I want them to be able to make good decisions, and I want them to be able to think about how everything connects to their life, even if they haven't memorized everything. I don't really care about memorization. I care about application. They're both good. It's great to memorize the Thanksgiving prayer. It's great to memorize Psalm 50. Those are core things that I did when I was younger. Thank you, Dina Hanna, for making me do that in 6th grade. But those are core things that are wonderful and important. But if Dina Hanna or whoever, I'm not going to exif her, never taught me how to apply that in my life, it's like that memorization is worth nothing, right? So problem-posing education is a way of teaching that invites kids to think and question, oh my gosh, question, red flag, okay? And co-create meaning and not memorize answers. And you might be uncomfortable with the idea of our kids questioning. And we'll come back to that. But remember how last time I said, notice the way you feel when I bring up certain things. There might be something that I bring up that makes you uncomfortable. I'm not asking you to not be uncomfortable. I am asking you to notice your discomfort and ask yourself where it's coming from. So this is why it matters. It invites reflection and invites ownership, and it connects that faith to daily life. And if we're being very sociological about this kind of education is the education that is research proven to help kids from all backgrounds. We have many kids in our church who are newcomer immigrants, who may not be as familiar with English as a means of communication. This is a method of education that helps them. We have kids who come from all different socioeconomic backgrounds. This is education that is research proven to help them. And there are kids with learning differences in our classes, whether we know it or not. This kind of education helps them with their learning. And I'm going to talk about what it looks like. But some quick things are asking open-ended questions, saying I don't know. When a kid asks you a question, don't just make up an answer. Say I don't know. That models reflection and curiosity and makes it see, it makes them see that you don't need to know everything, but you need to be thinking, right? And being okay with silence. When you ask a question of your students and they need a minute to think, don't yell at them and say, yalla, let's go. No one's talking. I've done that before. As an early teacher, when the kids wouldn't be talking, I'd be like, guys, let's go. Come on. You're not paying attention. Sometimes kids need a minute to think. Just a quick comparison. In banking education, you would say, here's what the story means. In problem-posing education, you would say, what do you notice about this story? In banking education, it's teacher-centered, but in problem-posing education, it's shared leadership. In banking, there's no space for doubt or emotions. And in problem posing, you're asking questions that invite depth and honesty. I had a conversation with one of our 6th graders a couple weeks ago where they raised their hand and they said, some kids at school don't believe that God is real because there's earthquakes. Okay? And so if I was a banking educator, I would say, well, that's because they're not Coptic Christian and you should just ignore them. But if I was a problem posing educator, I would say, that's a really great question. That's something I think about sometimes too. I wonder if we can find out some more information about why God allows suffering, or why there is suffering in the world and God exists and two things can be true. And in banking education, you are repeating information, like I'm saying to the kids a verse, the kids repeat the verse back, and that's my definition of success. And in problem-posing education, I'm sharing lived experience. Now, just one caveat. If you are doing some of the things on the left, that doesn't mean you're a bad Sunday school teacher. What I'm thinking is, if you're doing the things on the left, also do the things on the right. So if sometimes you're saying, here's what the story means, that's not a bad thing. But if you're also asking them, what do they notice in the story? That's a great thing. I'm not saying the left is bad. I'm saying do both. Yes, Maggie. Yes.
For younger students, is banking versus problem posing, like, is there an age group, or does this go for all ages? Because I think sometimes when they're younger, it's okay to memorize.
They should. That's what I'm saying. It's do both.
All right, okay.
Do both.
Also, I'm just curious, in the non-Sunday school world, is this how educators are being taught now? Like, is this, what's it like out, like, if in a traditional school, public school or private school setting? Just curious, not like.
So I think most of you know that I'm an administrator in a public school district. I used to be a teacher. And when I do classroom observations, I have a list of guidelines that I've been given by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts of what I should look for. It is not what's on the left. If I see what's on the left, the teacher might be like needing some support. If I see what's on the left and the right, that's a great lesson. If I see only what's on the right, I'm like, are you just doing this because I'm here? Okay? But it's good to see both. It's good to see both. That's what I'm saying. It's not that banking is the evil. It's that if we're only doing banking, we might be wondering why the kids are listening to all the things we say in class, but when they're outside in the playground, they're punching each other. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Sometimes I have the feeling, and someone who was born, went to Sunday school in Egypt can vouch or say if I'm totally off the mark, but sometimes I think it's culture too. Like if someone, like I think that, and again, I might be 100% wrong and biased, but, and you can tell me so, but like in Egypt and Sunday school, like I feel like I've seen it in like the Maharagan, memorization is like a huge part of learning. So I think it's a learning curve like for all of us. And I think that's how we grew up too, is just like, know Psalm 50, know this, know that, like you need to know it if you don't. And there's certain things, like you said, that we should know and we should be memorizing. But sometimes I think that that's almost what's like, what success is by knowing it by heart.
The only thing I want to say is I want to hear more, but I also don't want to go over 2 o'clock. If people are okay with going a little bit over 2 o'clock, I can keep hearing. If not, can we wait until the end where I'm going to take some more questions? It's up to you.
It's not a question, it's more, I just generally think that we probably all are somewhere in the range of this.
I agree. So I'm going to keep going only because I don't want to make us too late. So this is a saint, Saint Cycletica. I said it correctly. Mary, I had to ask Abuna Sam if it was. So Saint Cycletica, it's a saint, okay? You may not have heard of her. I did some research before this workshop. I wanted to know who are the people out there who in their service and in their prayer actually embodied problem-posing education. And this was a saint I came upon. Now, before you say, Maggie, you made this name up, I talked to Abuna Sam about this, and he said this is a real saint, and I can say it in this workshop. So she was someone who was a wealthy, educated Egyptian woman. She was a desert mother. She gave up her possessions to live a life of solitude. And she's not super well known. But one thing she did really well is that if you read through her work, she did a lot of questioning. I thought that was amazing. And I also just thought about how, like, I don't think as a Copt we talk enough about how important it is to question. I think sometimes when I was younger, and like I love my parents so much, but they were definitely taught in that very traditional way of like, I would ask a question and sometimes my parents would be like, no, like we don't believe that. Other people think that. And they would almost be like, okay, like we can't ask that question, you know, but we want our kids to ask questions. And she did a lot of self-reflection, and I just think it's someone to think about, someone to read about. And I also love, I'm just gonna say this is a very specific point of view. We don't talk about enough female saints in our classes, so we need to be doing that. So I'm just giving you some quick real life scenarios of this in action, banking versus problem posing. So in banking, if you're in elementary school, right? And if you can't see this, this is on your slide packet. So why did God flood the earth? Because people were bad. And again, it's not that the first question is wrong, it's that you also want to do the second one. In problem posing, how do you think Noah felt? What helped him trust God? If you're in middle school, if you're talking about temptation, banking, what should we do when we're tempted? Pray and say no. If you're problem posing, why is it hard to make good choices sometimes? And what helps you resist? And then for high school, in forgiveness, Christ says to forgive, so we do. And in problem posing, is it hard to forgive someone who hasn't apologized, and why? And you're seeing here, like, all of these reframes, they're making it so that faith is like something living. It's a process. It's not just a performance, right? Like sometimes we do things for performance. We need to make it real and authentic for our kids. So, very quickly, in elementary pre-K, if you just look at this scenario, in the banking approach, can I actually ask someone to read this with me? Who has the microphone? Okay, Dina, you be the student. All right. So, why did God send the flood?
Because people were bad.
Right. God wanted to punish them. What did Noah do?
He built the ark.
Good job. Again, it's not wrong, but now look at the difference. How we can shift this? Because this is only checking for factual recall, right? In the problem posing approach, how do you think Noah felt when God told him something so big?
Maybe scared or confused.
Yeah, it wasn't easy. What do you think helped him trust God?
Maybe he talked to God a lot.
Now the student is exploring emotions, right? They're exploring that relationship with Christ, and they're thinking about the application. I'm not just checking to make sure they know who Noah was, right? Now, for middle school, who wants to be the different student? Dina, you don't have to keep doing Martha, perfect. All right. So, in the banking approach, what should you do if you're tempted to do something wrong?
Pray and say no.
That is the correct answer. And you notice how I said the word correct, right? That's really emphasized because in banking, there's no gray. It's just black and white, right? Now, in the problem posing, think of a time you were tempted to do something, even something small. What made it hard to choose the right thing?
I didn't want my friends to think I was boring.
That's real. What helps you resist when it's tough? So when I say that's real, that's affirming for the kid that is real. Thank you for sharing that. That's a real thing that happens. Thank you for saying that. And for high school, Bishoy. So, we must always forgive because Christ said so. Nod silently. Thank you. So what do we do when someone hurts us?
Forgive them.
Thank you. And it keeps it simple, and it avoids any emotional or spiritual wrestling with this truth, right? And then in problem posing, is it hard to forgive someone who doesn't apologize? Why or why not?
It makes me feel like they got away with it.
That's honest. Do you think forgiveness is more about them or about your heart? Okay. Give me a thumbs up if you are seeing the differences in this line of questioning or these scenarios. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Yes. This is very true. Like sometimes when kids say something, like today I was, where's my co-sixth grade servants? Raldo and Sharif. I don't know if others are here, but today I was doing an activity at the beginning of our class about setting ground rules for our class because we've been having a hard time with behavior. And I said to the kids, if you say something even 30% silly, I'm moving on, okay? And one kid raised his hand and he said, we should hit each other in class. That's a new ground rule. So I said, okay, thank you very much, and I moved on, okay? I could have said, right? I could have said something that like embarrasses the child. And don't get me wrong, there have been times where just as all of us, sometimes we lose our temper, right? That's what I'm saying. Like, it's real. That's real. But the important thing is to try to move forward and not give the negative attention a lot of attention, right? And Geraldo's looking at me because, yes, we sometimes have a hard time with this in our class, and we just have to keep moving forward and not give those things attention. Yes. Yeah. We are? Yes. Well, no, I mean, that was in a group setting, and on the side, I said to the kid, you know we don't hit each other. And he said, wait, you know I said we don't hit each other, right? And I was like, oh, okay. So I'm just saying, sometimes, especially for middle school and high school, the kids will say something that is like purposely funny in order to get attention. And if we were to stop the lesson every time a kid does something that's foolish, right? Because we all make mistakes and kids will say things like that, we would never get through the lesson. And we have to keep the pace, like we keep the pace. They're not keeping the pace, we keep the pace, but we're working together as a team. But I totally agree with you that especially in those younger grades, when a kid says something like that, this is like a 7th grader, like this is like an older kid. Or 6th grader, sorry. This is something that in the younger grades, you definitely have to make sure to correct incorrect thoughts, okay? So I'm gonna wrap up soon, I promise. And if you need to, oh yes. Of course you can. So I think, you take the microphone,
Problem-solving part of it is a little difficult, and not just in that you need to be well prepared for a lesson. I think it actually requires the speaker to have talent in speaking and confidence in speaking, so that it demands a lot more of the servant, and not just in a way that we can just cope with by preparing better or being better lesson preparers. How do you deal with that?
So I don't agree with you. Okay. I actually think, and this is one of the reasons why I think people think problem posing is like the cop-out. Because if you are doing a lesson as a problem posing educator, you are actually doing less talking. You are doing, okay, so it requires trust. Okay. It does take a lot. It does.
And I think your point is sometimes if we can just shift and not be so harsh on the response, that's a shift. That's
Yeah.
one step towards.
Yes.
So I get that point too, but I agree with you.
It does require skill.
We can practice here. Like, we can
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It takes practice. It takes skill. I don't think you don't have it. I think you all have it. I think that unlike my job outside of this church, and unlike teaching in a school, everything we do comes from the Holy Spirit in this church and in this service, right? That's why we don't look for people to teach Sunday school that have teaching degrees, because everything that we do here comes from the Holy Spirit and comes from our love for Christ. And what you just named is an obstacle that is actually on the list that I'm about to describe. So thank you so much. Thank you. So if you look at this, you will see, if you can't see it that well on the screen, some obstacles that I think I've thought myself personally, and you might think, and I've actually heard them from people. So this is just some small shifts. So the first one is I don't have time for all of this. I only have 40 minutes. If I let the kids reflect or talk, we are never going to finish the lesson. Definitely, 100%. That's a real thought. So when the kids feel rushed or talked at, they're going to check out. They're going to check out. When they feel seen and when they feel heard, they're going to lean in. And like today, in our lesson, our kids were having a hard time paying attention, right, Geraldo? They were having a hard time, right? However, I felt like some of the things that we did in our class today helped them to engage. So it's not that them being quiet is a sign of a successful lesson. Them engaging is a sign of a successful lesson. And it's our job to just try to bring them in as much as possible. So one small shift that you could do is start with 1 minute of open-ended reflection or a personal connection. And that minute is going to actually save you time and reduce disruptions. You could do it at the beginning, you can do it in the middle, you can do it in the end, anytime. They act out or they don't listen anyway. I try to be warm, but some students just won't pay attention or behave. A lot of times when students are being disrespectful, it's really them saying, like, I don't really feel any connection to this, or I don't feel safe, right? I once read this book by an author that I actually got to work with in person, and it was really such a fruitful experience. She's actually the one who taught me about trauma-informed education. And she said to me, what if you started looking at every kid's behavior as if it was not a choice? And I was like, whoa. Like, that makes me think a lot, right? And we could dissect that question all day, but what if we just asked ourselves, what if every behavior that a kid did in our class is not a choice? What if it's a response? What if it's a coping mechanism or a survival mechanism, right? Because we have them for 1 hour per week. But all the things that they do when they come into our class are a result of everything that they do all week to survive and cope and be okay. And why this matters is that, a small shift is greeting them by name, giving them a predictable structure, and offering them a leadership role, and that can really shift dynamics and proactively prevent bad behavior. Sharif, I'm going to put you on the spot for a sec. Today, Sharif did a lesson where we were reviewing something that I would say is very challenging, right? Anytime you're reviewing like the Old Testament, I think it's a lot, right? There's a lot of material to get through. What Sharif did was he printed out different names of different prophets and different names that we've reviewed in the class, and he gave each kid a name. And every time we would review, a kid would know, oh, I have to keep an eye out, because when my name comes up, I need to stand up and be ready. And that was a way that he prevented disruptive behavior. And were the kids completely silent? They were absolutely not, okay? But the kids were engaged. And I think that's a tool that you can use. So I was taught to teach by telling. That isn't how I was raised. You listen, memorize, repeat. That's how it works. I don't think anyone in here thinks that. But just in case that's a thought that you have, that's a totally normal thought. And that's a really great way to teach for compliance. That's great for compliance. If we want kids to think and know God and be able to make good decisions, right? Because remember, you can know all the doxologies, but once you go off to college and you live by yourself, no offense, but I don't really care if my kid knows all the doxologies. I want them to know how to make good decisions that are Christ-centered. That's not good for transformation. And Christ, when he taught, he used parables. He used stories and he questioned, right? One small shift that you can make is just ask one open-ended question per lesson. Let's say you leave here and you're like, I don't know where that Maggie went to school. I don't care about anything she says. ولا بتفهم أي حاجة. All right? Just do this one small thing, please, for me. Just ask them an open-ended question. What if they say something wrong or off topic? I'm scared of opening it up and then lose control. I have a really hard time with that word, the word control. Like, think about that. If that's what we're afraid of losing control, is that like Christ-centered teaching? Did God make it so that every single person in the world did not have free will? He did not. We all have free will. We can all make our own choices. So where is that thought of control coming from? Just think about that. I don't think I need to tell you, but just think about that. And mistakes, our messiness, are part of learning. When I'm confessing with my father of confession, he's not asking me, like, all right, do you understand why you should not do this ever again? I mean, he doesn't talk like that. But I'm just saying, like, think about the people that you learn from the most, right? Do they teach like that? Or the people who teach you well, do they leave you thinking? So one small shift you could make is you offer a follow-up question. So a kid says something that's disruptive, you can say, you know what, again, as long as it's not like they raise their hand and they say something that's like a swear or racist or anything like that. But if they say something that's like, well, I don't really know if God is real, because how could there be earthquakes? I'm just going back to my example. You could say, that's really interesting. What makes you think that? And just ask them questions, okay? Some kids just don't want to engage. We talked about that. We talked about how it doesn't mean they don't care. It means they may not feel safe yet. If you're going around in a circle and you're doing an activity and a kid doesn't want to speak, let them pass. It's okay. They might feel safe to pass next week. Sometimes kids who see you respond to someone's answer are like, oh, that was a really embarrassing comment or a really embarrassing response to that person's answer. I'm not going to go when it's my turn. So just remember that. The way you're responding to everyone in class is also determining how people are going to respond or answer in the future. And try again next week. And now this is my favorite one because no one should be thinking this. But if you think this way, it's okay. I don't feel equipped. I'm not a teacher. I didn't go to school for this. I just want to do it right, and it feels complicated. You don't need a teaching degree. You already have what you need. You have the Holy Spirit. You have Christ. You have kindness. You have compassion. You have love in your heart, and you have a heart, right? You are here because you care about this, and you are all committed to learning, and I'm committed to learning with you. And that's what you need. And even if you do a lesson that is horrible, I have done lessons that are horrible. I have done lessons, I'll tell you, I have some stories, right? My first lesson ever when I was a student teacher, there was chalk on my back the whole time, all right? And the kids did not tell me, and they were high school, so you know they were taking pictures of it. They were making fun of me, definitely, okay? But I made kids laugh. That's great. I made a kid smile. I was kind, right? It doesn't really matter if you make a mistake or if you're learning and if you're being open to new ideas and it's not perfect, that's okay. But the kids are going to see you asking questions and being a humble teacher and leading, and they're going to respond really well to that. So I'm not going to do the concluding discussion because we are totally over the time. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. But just one thing to ask you to think about is what is one small thing based on what you've talked about today that you can shift? Just one small thing. Doesn't have to be everything, just one small shift. All right, so I'm going to end with this. If you extend your soul to the hungry and satisfy the afflicted soul, then your light shall dawn in the darkness, and your darkness shall be as the noonday. The Lord will guide you continually and satisfy your soul in drought and strengthen your bones. You shall be like a watered garden and like a spring of water whose waters do not fail. And this is from Isaiah 58. This is verses 10 through 11. And I really love this verse for ending with and thinking about, because again, if we're thinking about our kids and we're thinking about our kids as the garden that we are watering, then we're making our church fruitful and we're making our faith stronger for the future. Right, Kuta? Great. All right, so thank you so much. I have an exit ticket for you this time. If you could please scan this at your convenience, because it's also on your paper if you don't feel like doing this right now. And if you can just give me feedback on what worked for you today, what did not work for you, and what you would like to learn more about next time. And if you'd like me to actually follow the time limits that I set for myself, that would be great. I really appreciate your feedback. So thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah, Mark.
I don't know if this could be addressed today or maybe in a future time, but my question is with the, like in the 9th, 10th grade, in the 9th and 10th grade boys class, I feel like we try to ask open-ended questions, and my concern is we have some really philosophical, well-read, intelligent children or youth who say like these long, great answers, but then other kids who don't, and I'm concerned that the kids who don't no longer feel, or it's a little more uncomfortable for talking, and I'm curious, like, what's the best way to combat that?
So sometimes the kids who are not answering are kids who need more time to think before they answer. So have you ever thought about when you ask an open-ended question, do you have them talk to someone next to them first before asking them to share out? Okay, so that is one thing that you can do, is you can just say, talk to the person next to you about this question, okay? Right? Yes. Talk to the person next to you about this question, and then we're going to share out as a group, okay? That is just something very simple that you can do that will help them think about their answer. And the other thing is they might not feel comfortable sharing in front of everyone, but I fully believe every one of our kids knows a lot, right? I think that they are all very smart, right? But one thing that you can do is you can have them share in a small group, so that way everyone has a chance to share it, not just the kids who feel comfortable talking, okay? Other questions? That's a great question. And that will definitely work, by the way. That's like teaching 101. Great. I'm excited to try. I love hearing that. That's so good. All right. What other questions? You want, say it again? Yeah. You want some workshops to talk more? Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Whatever you need. Great. Other questions? Concerns? Insults? Just making sure you're paying attention. Oh my gosh, Inez raised her hand when I said insults. Go ahead. That is an excellent question. Do we consider parent and family engagement with Sunday school to be a core value? I don't think that we do that consistently. I think we have 1 or 2 parent meetings per year, and I think some of us try to send messages in the parents' WhatsApp groups, and I think we do that, and that's really good. But that, you're talking about how do we engage families with what we do so that everything has a partnership at home, right? Am I understanding that correctly? Because if the kids are not talking about this at all at home and they're not living the faith, right? And some of us, it's different families are in different phases in different places, right? Not everyone can do everything perfectly. I mean, I certainly know I cannot, okay? Definitely not a perfect parent in terms of what my kid learns in Sunday school. One thing to consider is asking ourselves as Sunday school teachers, how are we engaging families? Like, how are we connecting everything that we're doing with the families so that they have what they need to continue this work at home? Okay? Okay. It's a great question. We could do a whole thing about that, which we can. Yes? Yes, absolutely. I have done some things in St. Rebecca's kind of related to this, but we can do a very intentional, specific thing. Yes. Yes, Bishoy.
I think it's easy to be nihilistic and say, oh, we only have an hour a week, but you only have an hour a week. You have an hour a week, so use that hour. And then there are also other services in the church, and the parents should be doing some of this. And so, yes, we only have an hour a week, but we have an hour a week.
Yeah.
So use that hour.
Yeah.
If you say that, oh, well, it's an hour a week and I'm not going to do anything, then we're the servant who had one talent and just buried it, you know? But if you want to make that hour productive, then make that hour productive.
Absolutely.
So I teach 9th and 10th grade girls. Every year when we get our list of girls, we'll actually separate them. And every servant gets, I don't know, between like 3 to 5 girls. And that's our girl for the year or for the 2 years. And so we'll text them every holiday, anytime there is an event, we'll text them, be like, hey, like sign up, here's the link, all these things. But also allows you to like build a relationship. So I'll text them like on their birthdays, and then the more you talk to them, I will say I get ghosted all the time, but eventually, after like 10 texts, they will respond, or they're like, thumbs me up. And then it gets to the point where like now I have girls that ghosted me for a really long time, and now she'll come to me, give me a hug, and like she'll ask about me and I'll ask about her, and we've developed a relationship. And I think that makes a huge difference. And sometimes like they don't want to come to class for whatever reason, but then I'm not talking about myself, but like they'll see you and be like, can you actually just sit next to me? I just want you to come sit next to me. Things like that make a huge difference. And it makes a huge difference with me.
Sandra kind of touched upon 2 things. She touched upon connection, right? Like kids need connection to feel safe in class. And she also touched on, what do you need as a servant to feel filled during your Sunday school service, which we could talk about that another time too. Any other questions? Okay, thank you for listening to me, and I know it's Sunday and it's a really long day, but I really appreciate you allowing me to serve you in this way, because I don't think you understand how much I enjoy it. So thank you all.
Again, to those who were not here in the beginning, Vesper of St. Mark at 7 this Wednesday. It's important to reinforce that for the kids. Most of us were not able to attend the liturgy, but the Vesper will be a good opportunity. Next